Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty incredible this time.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
It's Giorgione's The Tempest,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a painting that has mystified people for centuries.
Absolutely, and for good reason.
For good reason.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the painting itself, maybe
Yeah.
you can give us a little bit of background on Giorgione.
Yeah, so Giorgione was an Italian painter of the High Renaissance. So we're talking, like late 1400s, early 1500s.
Yeah.
And he was a Venetian painter specifically. And what we know about him is pretty limited.
Yeah, he's sort of a mysterious figure.
A very mysterious figure, exactly. In fact, he died quite young.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so he died, in his early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so we only have a very small number of works that are securely attributed to him.
Oh, wow.
But those works, like The Tempest, are incredibly influential, and they really had a lasting impact on Venetian painting.
And I think, part of what makes him so interesting, too, is that he was really one of the first artists to sort of like elevate the role of the landscape in painting.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that in The Tempest, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So up until this point, landscapes were really just kind of like backdrops, right?
Yeah.
They were just there to provide a setting.
Right.
But Giorgione and then artists that follow him, they really start to see the landscape as something more than just a background.
Yeah, it's like another character.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like another character, and it creates this whole mood and atmosphere in the painting.
Right.
That wouldn't be there if it was just like, some trees and a blue sky in the
Yeah.
background. It's really integral to the meaning of the work,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of meaning, I mean, this is a painting that is, like we said, known for its ambiguity, its
Mhm.
mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into all of that, can you walk us through what it is we're actually looking at?
Sure. So, imagine like this sort of soft, almost golden light
Okay.
kind of bathing the whole scene. Yeah. And it's very much in these like earthy tones, like greens and browns and blues. And, we have, as you mentioned, this incredible landscape, which we'll talk about more in detail.
Yeah.
But then in the foreground, we have these two figures. There's a woman and a baby.
Right.
And she's nursing the baby, and she's kind of sitting on the ground in this very sort of relaxed, but also kind of unusual pose.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that she's positioned
Yeah.
because, she's not like holding the baby right in front of her. It's sort of off to the side, which I've read has actually led to some interesting interpretations about, the artist's intentions.
Yeah, and it was very much like a break from tradition.
Right.
Because typically, in paintings of the Virgin and Child, for example,
Right.
The baby is very much the focal point, and she's cradling the baby.
Mm.
So it's a much more kind of natural, less idealized in a way depiction of motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, we have this male figure.
Right, like sort of standing opposite her.
Yeah, exactly.
But not looking directly at her.
Yeah, it's almost like he's kind of looking past her, or maybe he's just lost in thought. We don't really know.
Yeah, very enigmatic.
Yeah.
And he's holding like, some people say it's a staff, other people say it's a pike.
Right. Yeah, we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of those details that's open to interpretation.
Right, and then of course we have the Tempest itself, right?
Yeah.
The storm.
Yes. So looming over all of this, we have these very dramatic storm clouds.
Right.
And there's a bolt of lightning that's kind of illuminating the sky.
Yeah, it's really striking.
Yeah, and it creates this really interesting contrast between the kind of serenity of the figures and the sort of like impending chaos of this storm.
Yeah, it's like this calm before the storm, literally.
Literally, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that contrast is something that really, captivates viewers, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, what is the relationship between these figures and the storm?
Right,
Are they
yeah.
aware of it? Are they ignoring it?
Right.
It raises all these questions.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that the technique that Giorgione used, using oil paint on canvas,
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty groundbreaking for the time.
Absolutely, yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was very new at the time,
Right.
and it allowed him to achieve these really subtle effects of light and shadow,
Right.
and this kind of soft blending of colors that just wasn't really possible with earlier techniques.
And that sort of adds to the overall like dreamy, mysterious quality of the painting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's fascinating how all these elements come together
Mhm.
to create this really compelling but also very puzzling image.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, with all this mystery, there's going to be a lot of different interpretations of what this painting could mean.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So let's dive into some of those.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so where do we even begin with the interpretations of this painting?
Well, I think one of the most common interpretations is that it's a biblical allegory.
Okay.
Some scholars believe that the figures represent Adam and Eve.
Okay, so like after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden?
Exactly, yeah. So, the woman nursing the baby could be Eve.
Okay.
And then the male figure could be Adam.
And the storm, the tempest would be God's wrath?
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. It's kind of like this visual representation of the fallen world, right?
Right, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. But there are other interpretations that draw on classical mythology.
Oh, okay, so like Greek and Roman myths.
Exactly, yeah. For example, some scholars have connected the painting to the myth of Paris and Oenone. And this is a story about love and betrayal and abandonment.
Okay.
So, you could see the woman as Oenone, who was abandoned by Paris.
Right.
And then the male figure could be Paris.
Okay.
And then the storm would be symbolic of like the turmoil and the emotional upheaval that she's going through.
Interesting. So we've got these two kind of like very specific interpretations, one biblical, one mythological.
Right.
But could it also be that Giorgione wasn't necessarily trying to tell a specific story?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility too.
Okay.
Some art historians believe that The Tempest is more about evoking a particular mood or atmosphere
Okay.
than it is about illustrating a specific narrative.
So it's more about like the feeling that the painting evokes.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, you look at this painting and you get this sense of mystery and a little bit of unease.
Right.
And a sense of like the power of nature.
Right.
But it's not clear exactly what's going on or what the story is.
And that's what makes it so compelling.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like it draws you in and it makes you want to keep looking at it and trying to figure it out.
Right.
And there's that famous quote from Lord Byron, right?
Sure, yeah.
Where he said that The Tempest was his favorite painting because of its ambiguity.
Mm.
Yeah, like he loved that it didn't give you all the answers.
Right.
And it kind of allowed you to bring your own interpretation to it.
Exactly.
Which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's that amazing detail that we talked about earlier about the hidden nude figure.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite things about this painting.
It's so cool.
So, yeah, X-rays have revealed that originally there was a nude woman standing where the male figure is now.
Whoa.
Yeah, so at some point, Giorgione decided to paint over her and replace her with this clothed male figure.
So do we have any idea, like, why he would have done that?
I mean, nobody knows for sure.
Okay.
But, it's possible that it was just, an artistic decision.
Okay.
Like maybe he decided that the composition worked better with the male figure.
Right.
But it's also possible that it was, due to some external pressure.
Okay, so like maybe he was worried about offending someone.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Nudity was, it was controversial in some circles at the time.
Yeah.
So, we don't know for sure, but it's just another layer of mystery that makes this painting so fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the figures, we've talked about the storm, but what about that city in the background?
Oh, yeah, the city is interesting too.
What do you make of it?
Well, it's kind of like this this ghostly presence in the background.
Right.
It's partially in ruins.
Yeah.
And it's kind of shrouded in this hazy atmosphere.
It's almost like it's fading away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, some scholars see it as a symbol of civilization.
Okay.
And maybe even like the fragility of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
It's this reminder that human creations are impermanent.
Right.
And that nature is ultimately more powerful.
Yeah, it's this contrast between the natural world and the man-made world.
Exactly.
And the fact that the natural world is always going to win in the end.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit unsettling, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Let me think about it that way.
But I think it's also, it's a powerful reminder of our place in the world.
Right.
We're not separate from nature. We're a part of it.
Yeah.
And we need to respect that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too how the figures in the foreground, they seem completely detached from the city. Like they're not even looking at it.
Right, yeah, it's like they're in their own little world.
Yeah.
And the city is just this kind of like backdrop to their own personal drama.
Yeah. Almost like it's irrelevant to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how Giorgione creates this sense of isolation, even though there are, two figures in the painting and there's this city in the background.
Right. Yeah, there's this feeling of loneliness or solitude that pervades the whole painting.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
It is.
It's fun, we've been talking about all this like turmoil and the storm and the sense of unease. But, the painting itself, like visually, it's actually very like tranquil and beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's a really interesting paradox, right?
It is.
Because you have this storm brewing and these mysterious figures and this kind of haunting landscape.
Right.
But then the way that Giorgione paints it, it's so peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the colors are so soft and harmonious.
Right.
And the light is so beautiful.
Yeah. It's like he's somehow capturing both like the beauty and the kind of like the darkness of nature at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. It's like nature can be both destructive and life-giving.
Right.
And I think this painting really captures that duality.
Yeah, it's like this reminder that even in the midst of chaos, there can be beauty and peace.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really relevant to our lives too, right?
Absolutely.
Like we all go through storms, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
And it's helpful to remember that even in those difficult times, there's still beauty to be found.
Right. There's still like a sense of hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why this painting has resonated with people for so long.
It's timeless.
It is. It's timeless because it speaks to something very fundamental about the human experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if someone's, going to see this painting for the first time, what advice would you give them?
I would say don't try to figure it out too much. Just let yourself experience it. Like take in the colors, take in the composition, the light.
Yeah.
And just see what thoughts and feelings it evokes in you.
Yeah. Like don't get bogged down in trying to find like the one right answer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because there isn't one.
Right.
That's part of the beauty of it.
Right. Yeah, it's open to interpretation.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It is. It's like a conversation, right? You have your interpretation, I have my interpretation.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it and learn from each other.
Right. And the painting itself is kind of like participating in that conversation too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like it's speaking to us across the centuries.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much about this painting.
You do.
And about Giorgione and I feel like, I've always loved this painting. But I feel like I see it in a whole new light now.
Yeah, me too. It's amazing how, even after spending so much time with it, there's still so much more to discover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into The Tempest.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was fun.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us too.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And we hope you'll join us again for our next deep dive.
Yeah, see you next time.
See you next time.